Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon. This afternoon we're going to be having a look at a B2B case study about building an Instech ecosystem. So a little bit more about that in a moment. But firstly, my name is David Kirk. I am the Strategic Alliances and Sales Director at Passel. For those of you who don't know what Passel is, we are a content marketing technology that allows busy experts to become recognized thought leaders in their niche. We're very fortunate this afternoon to be joined by Paolo Cuomo, COO at Charles Taylor Managing Agency. Welcome, Paolo.
Welcome, David. Thank you. It's great to be here, both with the dynamic Passel team in person. Most of our interaction has previously been electronic, and it's great to meet people in person, but also in your WeWork space here in Moorgate. It's very different to the offices just half a mile down the road, nearer to the Lloyd's building.
Excellent. So just probably just to begin with, we obviously have a range of listeners today, and I think probably a really good starting point would be just to clarify exactly what Instech is. What does it actually mean?
Sure, no, that's a very good question, and frankly a question that I think most of us would have struggled to even ask 18 months ago, let alone answer. So the easy answer is that Instech is the insurance version of FinTech, but that's obviously a bit of a cop-out. So what FinTech is, as we've increasingly read in the papers over the last few years, is the way that technology is really impacting the financial services. And Instech is the same change that's really happening in insurance. So it's a general term referring to the new technologies that are impacting insurance, those startups that are coming into the insurance sector disrupt, and really a phrase to the ecosystem that is seeing insurance think about the role of technology in taking it forward. And it's worth pointing out that whilst Instech as a phrase was basically coined at the beginning of 2015, what we've seen over the last year or so is that the term insurtech has very much taken over, and actually, as you can see on the graph, insurtech as a term, which is probably slightly easier for people to understand, given that it does sound a little bit more like insurance, is what we're seeing on Twitter, what we're seeing in the increasing number of news articles and press releases on this topic.
Okay, excellent. And for the benefit of our listeners, if that's something you want to dive into a little bit more, our friends over in Singapore, Leotech, have put together this fantastic analysis, and there's certainly more to this. So feel free to go and take a look.
It's actually great what they've done. If you look back to pretty much a year ago, you could count in single digits the number of times the hashtag Instech or insurtech have been used, and already it's 1 year on is vastly larger than that.
Yeah. So on that point, let's maybe take a high-level look of exactly how you've aided to build this ecosystem. So from our perspective, when we typically look at the content strategy, we align it to something called the content pyramid, and we usually see this as consisting of 3 different layers. So very typically in an organization, we'll see hero content that will really kind of spearhead the attack. It's those large-scale projects. It's the point in time that your brand is switched on. It might be your classic breakfast seminar. It might be a PR event, a research paper. Of course, once that particular asset has finished, then your brand is switched off. But very, very key, and typically where most people start. The base of the pyramid is hygiene content. Very basically, it's your brochure website. It's always switched on, but it is an area that is quite difficult to differentiate yourself, particularly if you're in a competitive market. So what we see is those that execute this entire pyramid will use something called hub content that sits between the two. It drives that engagement between hero being switched on and then being switched off, and it's done very well if it's expert-led, it's timely, and it's relevant to that audience. So I thought maybe, Paolo, we're going to go into a couple of these in a moment of exactly how you've done this with Instech, but maybe you could just give us a quick high-level kind of digest of those three areas.
Absolutely, and I really like this framework, and in fact it's something I've used with clients at Charles Taylor when we're talking about this. We naturally started in Instech London with the hero content, and I guess we didn't realise that's what we were doing, and I think we'd tried the hygiene side of things a bit and actually realised that wasn't getting anywhere, and then we said, well, yeah, let's do something big. We did the hero content, it worked, and then that naturally gave us the confidence to say, okay, what next? But as you say, hero content, big meetups with lots of people, lots of arranging is challenging, and therefore when we identified the ability to use this hub content to actually keep things going, more than just the odd tweet, that makes sense. So we've now very much got a model of hero content every few months, hygiene content, a constant stream, but actually when you've got lots on, it's pretty difficult to keep those tweets running, to keep the small blog posts running, and therefore the ability to use a tool such as Passel to create a real hub of content for ourselves and for all of our members is invaluable.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's show some real examples of this. I think this is where it all started back in April 20th, 2015. Take us through kind of the first piece of
well, actually, David, I'll take you back even before that, because I think it's important to understand what didn't work for us then to understand how effective the last year has been. So we go all the way back to 2013, in fact, where Jeremy Burgess, one of the founders of the insurance network, made a bold decision to wrap up his summer TINTech conference, not with a high-powered keynote speaker or anything, but with an Oxford-style debate where Robin Mertens and I spoke for the motion that the insurance market will always be on the back foot when it comes to technology. And Simon Gaffney from Willis and David Clamp from Hiscox spoke against the motion. Now, it was somewhat of a draw, and the exact discussion is lost in time, but we realised there's a topic here that needs to be discussed, and we want to start discussing it with people, and frankly we then took the wrong approach, and we started thinking about how could we push out some hygiene information, etc., and how could we maybe engage people, and we set up a group called Insight in 2014, and really things didn't happen, and we were on the cusp of giving up. And then we learnt about what Eddie George was doing with New Finance, and what Eddie was doing was creating meetups for the fintech community, so very much the hero content in the fintech side, and we attended some of these with many people, local bars, speakers, pitches, some very high quality insight, but nothing about insurance. And we said, well, hang on, that got us interested. We went along to Eddie's events, but there's nothing to do with insurance, so we said, let's go for it. And we made the most of technology. If we wanted to do it 2 or 3 years earlier, there wasn't the type of technology such as Meetup, and so we held our first Meetup event. And as you say, there were about 30 people there. I spent the whole evening being nervous because I wasn't sure what people were going to get out of it. I don't really remember the details of any conversations because it was more just trying to pull people together and hope that they had a valuable time. And afterwards, everyone said, we need more of this. This worked for us. And to your earlier description of hero content, this was classically there. People went away saying, wow, there is the beginnings of a community talking about this important topic. And so we said, we need to do more of this. And we did. We ran another event, and then that was the trigger point. And I think a key lesson about these hero events is what they create. They create opportunities to serendipity. They get your brand into places you weren't expecting. We were in fact approached by a gentleman called Nectarius Liolios, who was in the process of setting up Startup Bootcamp in SureTech. And he said, this is great. We want to be part of this. Come along and do your next event at our place. And if we'd been doing quiet, Lloyd's only focused events, there would be no chance I would have met an entrepreneur like that who was thinking about the importance also of insurance technology. And then we went along and we had a typical pitch session. People we didn't know but who were interested came along and pitched. And in fact, that's how we met Passel, because Passel came along and spoke as well. And suddenly the train was almost out of control in a positive way, because the number of people who wanted to speak was more than we had space for, and so there was already some content for the next thing.
Excellent. That's probably actually a really good insight for anyone who's looking to start this. Actually, where you do start, and there's more to it than maybe just the first event. In terms of, I guess, just kind of looking at how some of this has come back to you as a personal brand very quickly. I mean, I constantly hear your name, and this is probably a great example. You seem to have kind of become a go-to expert in the Instech space. Being invited to events, is that something that's common now?
Certainly, there have been a lot of invitations, and I think this is indicative of the hunger for the topic. So in some ways we've been lucky that we've hit the wave at the right time. If we tried to do all this 2 years ago, as I have said before, people wouldn't be interested. In a couple of years' time, the market would be in a very different place. So certainly there's an element of timing, but when people reach out and say, can you come and talk, it's important to grasp those opportunities, not just for yourself, but also for the group you're trying to create. The value for the ecosystem is that the ecosystem grows. So if we take the example on screen of the Brown-Jacobson event, there were a lot of people there who were unawares of what was being done. And so going along and talking to them gave a real opportunity. And in fact, you can see that the photo on the right, there was a mix there of people who already understood the importance of technology insurance, but also some Brown-Jacobson clients, some people who were interested in the fintech side of things, but really hadn't thought of the importance of insurance. And it was an excellent collection of people, and it was a real chance to get across to them how much things were changing. And there's a whole range of events, and if you're trying to build something from nothing, you need to grab all the opportunities. So on the right, the Brown-Jacobson event. On the left was an excellent session set up by Celent. Celent invited 120 of their clients along to talk about what was going to happen in the world of insurance technology, and they did a fantastic session. They brought speakers in, including from abroad, who effectively just scared the audience in a positive way. And what I did in the keynote at the end was try and put it all together and effectively say, look, don't worry, this change is coming. The change won't be as quick as you expect, but the impacts will be more profound than you may expect. And I think part of what you need to do if you are trying to create something from nothing is you need to make sure that it doesn't frighten people. You need to make sure that what you're offering, if you're creating a new brand, if you're creating an ecosystem, is almost a hand-holding, so that people don't feel scared, don't feel they need to leap into the unknown.
Yeah. I think what's, just very quickly to touch on it again, is what's very interesting here is you're actually collaborating with other people's events. So even though this Instech ecosystem community that you were creating yourself, actually you're participating in other people's events, and it's actually, and I think you mentioned it, it's the fact that actually you do have to work with others, and actually to develop an actual ecosystem, you can't just focus on your own project. You've got to go beyond that and go maybe work with other people who might be seen as some sort of competition for what you're actually achieving with events and
no, I agree, and at the moment there's a wonderful collaborative vibe. I can see that changing maybe in a few years, but right now, between all the various different startup initiatives amongst the innovators themselves, amongst the insurance practitioners, everyone realizes, and you can quote all the numbers about a $1 trillion disruption opportunity or $40 billion being spent on insurance technology in the next few years and things. But at the end of the day, it's all very new. There's space for all of us, and we all benefit from working together on this. And I think that I've yet to see a situation where people have put sort of competitive ideas ahead of just getting a move on. And almost the collaboration that we see in the articles that we have on our Passel page is a good example. People are writing some really insightful articles there that they want to share with people, when actually some of that insight to some extent could start to offer them a competitive advantage. But at the moment, the community is in such a place that we're all sort of learning together.
Yeah, and all of this sounds quite local, and it probably is actually perceived to a lot of people in the London market that it is. But I picked up on this quite recently, where presumably the handle @insure_tech must be somewhere in Germany. And so this is interesting to see that actually you're managing to have a global footprint, and presumably this isn't because you're traveling to Germany?
No, you're right. This is the world today, I guess, that anyone from anywhere can be aware of what's going on. The particular example here is interesting. You start to tweet as part of your hygiene content just to sort of keep engagement. But actually what that also allows is people, irrespective of geography, to catch on to what you're doing. And I hope to give them encouragement. So the InsurTech initiative in Germany is maybe 6 to 9 months behind where Instech London is. And I feel that they can see and learn much in the same way, for example, that we've learned from what Eddie George did in New Finance here in London, or what the Swiss fintech group are doing out in Switzerland. And I've met with them when they've come to London and learned from what they've done, because they're a year or so ahead. I think that we should remember how lucky we are in this particular situation in terms of being in London, and some people setting up new things are not going to have these advantages. But London, as the report today, in fact, from ZDN, that said London remains, from a financial service point of view, the world-leading city. We combine that with it being a leader for insurance, and you say, well, if we can be a world-leading financial service centre, a world leader for fintech, a world leader for insurance, then we've absolutely got to be a world leader for Instech. And there's almost an obligation on those of us who are pushing this forward to make sure that we don't lose the initiative to somewhere in the US or Singapore or wherever it might be.
Sure. So we've obviously covered off there quite a bit around this hero piece, and obviously lightly touched on the hygiene there. In terms of how you executed this hub strategy, the engagement around that, maybe your mechanisms. Obviously, there's a clear social presence you have on the various channels. What about other things? Maybe newsletters. How have you? What's going on here? What advice would you give?
We're trying to do two things at the same time, and they work nicely together. One is we are trying to establish Instech London as a go-to brand for all of these discussions. The other is we're trying to offer a service to people, whether inherently members of the group or those who are thinking, let's find out more about this topic. We're trying to offer an ability for them to quickly understand what's going on. So if we take the PASL example on screen, yes, it's great for us to be able to say, hey, come and look at our hub content. That's an invaluable part of how we've raised our brand. But actually, what's really valuable is we can say to someone, if you want to understand more about what's happening in this area, go here, and you've got a selection of articles, some of us written by ourselves, some written by other insurance people, some written by technologists. Most of it turns out to be from the UK, but several that are from abroad. So, for example, we reposted a PASL from the Insurance Thought Leadership Network in California only the other day. And there have been several occasions where I've been approached and I've said, look, I need some background, what can I do? And I just send them the web link, and I say, go, choose what looks interesting. And in fact, we're currently in discussions as part of the Lloyd's target operating model plan as to how a similar approach to having some ready-to-go content for people who want to get more involved in this sector, in this topic can. And we've really benefited. Newsletters is another interesting one. Obviously, everyone gets too much email. Mm-hmm. We try and get the balance right in terms of issuing just a brief newsletter once a week. But actually, this again is an example of how people need to make the most of technology. When we started a year ago, we were using the Meetup technology for newsletters, which is not particularly user-friendly, but is convenient because it naturally goes to all your Meetup members. If you move to something like MailChimp, then actually it's so much easier. So I think anyone who's trying to start things up should realize the wealth of technology and sort of hand-holding tools out there, be it PASL, be it MailChimp, be it Meetup or whatever, and just make the most. And it's also worth thinking about, investing the £50 or the £100 or whatever it might be to take the better than free version. Yeah. Because for a very small investment, you get a significantly better tool set typically.
Yeah, it's something I'm just going to maybe have another opinion on. You mentioned there people get too much email. I couldn't agree more, but I think it's fair to say that people get too much of the wrong email. There was some recent research by McKinsey that suggested that actually email marketing is 40 times more engaging than combining the social channels together. So my opinion of what you've got here is actually you're sending a relevant email to the right people who are of interest, and you've obviously managed to capture their details, not by scraping the internet, but actually by people that you've interacted with. So maybe there's an important lesson here for anyone looking to execute this model to maybe start small and then scale, and as you begin to gain that interest, they're the people who you're actually topping up with these insights.
It sounds cliche, but far better to get a 50% hit rate on a newsletter from 300 people than to have a few percent from thousands of people. You know, you may even end up with slightly more people, but then that's not engagement. That's almost potluck. Yeah. And you don't build something based on potluck. You build it on having a core of interested people.
Yeah. So we here in our office at WeWork in Moorgate, we were privileged to have the most latest meetup. And it was your show and tell special, and I think it's fair to say you kind of blew this one away. What was different about it, and why do you think you managed to have in the region of 300 people, 20 insurance startups attend, a flagship sponsor from PwC? How did that come about, and how does this kind of fit into the strategy overall?
So it's exactly right. This was sort of the ultimate hero content success, and almost sets the bar so high that we're not sure what to do next, but we will carry on trying. It's cliche to say this is a result of hard work, etc. It was, and a lot of people put a lot of into it. But actually, part of it's to do with timing. If we tried to do this event a year ago, it wouldn't have worked. We wouldn't have got the quality of the exhibitors. We wouldn't have got the relevant attendees, etc. So it's about getting the timing right, and that is about staying in touch with the members. So we got feedback that people were fed up of both giving and hearing pitches, and they said, we want to engage more. And it's like, well, what's the best way to do that? The best way to do that is actually just to give everyone a table and tell people to walk around. Similarly, from an attendance point of view, we managed to get at this event senior people from Lloyd's, senior people from a number of the brokers and a number of the London market carriers. And that was both invaluable for the startups, because they were hearing from the people who genuinely have the budgets to invest in these things, rather than just a lot of people who thought, oh, that's interesting. And it was invaluable for the senior leaders who, to date, this had been stuff they'd read in the Saturday FT supplement or whatever it might have been. Actually walking into a space as different as the WeWork space to engage with people in an environment that those people felt comfortable with. They hadn't been forced to put on a tie to go and speak in a lawyer's office or something. So a combination of things. And I think from a momentum point of view, you've just got to be bold and do it. So, we were worried, would enough people turn up? Would the exhibits be as compelling as we wanted? Well, you need to take a risk or two, and a risk or two were taken, and it paid off, because people want to make this kind of thing a success.
Yeah, and we obviously noted before that you've had some great successes to date. This was obviously quite a big thing. I mean, there's not much for me to say on it. Do you want to give us a little bit of background on here? And obviously this was quite recent.
Yeah, well, it's quite recent, and this plays to, I've used the word serendipity too many times, but there's an element of that. We, as the Instech community, did not, in fact, lobby for this. What happened was that Downing Street, who have been obviously talking about fintech for quite some time, and David Cameron made real statements about it last year, and Tech City UK, which has been very much driving a lot of the, let's call it, the infrastructure around the fintech space, they realized together that there was a need to actually say what next in insurance. And so they then reached out, and if they tried to reach out 6 months ago, they probably wouldn't have come across any of the people in the photos there, because none of us were really pushing the boundaries at that point. So by creating a group of people who are pushing something, when government, Tech City UK, etc., realised that actually maybe there's something to talk about here, they had no trouble coming and finding people who were ready, willing to talk. And there's only so much that you can do in 90 minutes when you've got 20 people around a table in Downing Street. But actually, even the longest journey starts with a small step, and it's given us confidence that we're not working in a bubble. That actually, the government realises, to my earlier point, that if we can be great at fintech, if we can be great at insurance, why not put it all together and be the world leader in insurance technology?
So you mentioned there this long journey. We're very much at the start of it. So and there's obviously been some fantastic success to date. Where is this journey going? What's the next steps? And importantly, kind of what's the output from all of this?
So I mean that is literally the $1 trillion question. The insurance market has been successful for hundreds of years, and many of the players in it have been successful for hundreds of years. Charles Taylor, with whom I work, has been in the sector for 130 years. The likes of Munich Re and Swiss Re have very long histories. So insurance does seem to work to a slower cycle time, but we're aware that change is happening. The market will benefit from the disruption driven by insurance technology changes. But from an output point of view, what we need to do is we need to change from really where we were in 2015, which was getting awareness, getting excitement, getting interest, and actually say, what can we do to get underwriters and brokers working more efficiently? What can we do to get suppliers helping us understand the art of the possible with new technology? How can we make sure that ultimately what insurance is trying to do, which is to offer a promise to pay to the policyholders, how can we do that in a more cost-effective manner, in a more straightforward manner for customers? And I think 2016 is the year where we go from being very excited about the potential to actually seeing proper insurance companies, both startups and the incumbents, start to do things a bit differently, a bit more smartly, and a bit more efficiently, therefore benefiting everyone.
Brilliant. I mean, that's a fantastic insight, Paolo, into obviously the niche Instech space, but more broadly into actually how you can successfully build an ecosystem in a particular area. I think just before we jump into some questions, a closing point here would be there is a link here, insights.instech.london will take you to that curated page of content. Instech.London, I believe, is your website as well.
Yeah, that's where to sign up for the mailing list, absolutely.
Yeah, and where would people find your next event?
So we have an event in a couple of days' time, which is already full, but we will be videoing to share with people. It will be a real discussion with some of the incumbents as to what they need from the startups. And then the Instech.London mailing list will keep people informed. The excitement, I think, over the next few months will be that as the Lloyd's target operating model work really starts to gain momentum and ask for input on the innovative technology side, we will see a lot of market-wide events really aiming to educate people as to the art of the possible when it comes to technology, everything from drones in claims management through to machine learning, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, etc., etc.
Brilliant. We've probably got time just for a couple of questions here. So how have you managed to get kind of the large companies to come on board?
Very good question. Large companies tend not to come on board. What comes on board are individuals, and so part of the success of our growth over the past year actually is giving an opportunity for younger people in organisations who maybe thought they had good ideas but felt they weren't being listened to actually meet a community of other interested people and therefore maintain confidence. And then they will naturally start to push a message within organisations, and then you slowly see that percolate upwards. And in fact, it's interesting to see some of the speakers at the upcoming event we have who are some of the leaders of some of the large incumbents who really, they don't know what's going to happen, but they do know that it's important. They want to engage with the ecosystem.
And just one final question here, just before we run out of time. Very, very bluntly, it all sounds like hype.
Yes, it does sound like hype. I think there is undoubtedly an enormous amount of hype. There's a lot of there's a lot of startups out there full of energy who I'm not sure will be successful. They're either coming up with products that'll be too easy to copy, they'll struggle to fight against the incumbents and will never actually get to scale. And yeah, I would be surprised if a lot of the new ideas of this year and maybe even next actually really get to maturity. So from that point of view, there's lots of hype. But to quote Amara's law, we always hype things up on the technology side early in the journey, and we always fail to anticipate quite how big the change is going to be. So, we could sit here getting excited about virtual reality goggles and what that means and how we'll all be, looking at all our insurance risks through VR goggles in the next couple of years. And of course, that's not going to happen. People are going to continue engaging with risks in the way they always had. But a technology like virtual reality in 5 or 10 years' time will allow a fundamentally different way of understanding, be it a new building or whatever it might be, and therefore pricing that risk. So yes, there is a lot of hype. People shouldn't feel that they need to understand all of this immediately, otherwise they won't be able to do their job properly, because that's not true. But it is absolutely necessary for people to start to engage with this topic now, so that as it becomes increasingly important and increasingly normal over the coming years, they'll be in a good position to be on that journey rather than have to react in 5 years' time when they realise their competitors are way ahead of them.
Sure. Excellent. Well, that's just about we've got all time for today. So, Paolo, thank you very much for making the time and joining us. I hope that was of interest to the audience. Obviously, feel free to get in touch with any specific questions. And if Instech is an area of interest, then I highly suggest you jump over to the site there, insights.instech.london. We look forward to you joining our next webinar next Wednesday. Thank you very much.